Yo, 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 yo. Welcome to another stream. Honestly, I never would have thought that I would become a streamer one day. Even though this isn't like full-time streaming or anything, but like, man, it feels weird. Welcome back to another day. We have 3 viewers at the moment. Let me just pop a quick thing. Morning. Oh, sorry, evening. Jack. Evening, everyone. Depending on where you are, I don't think there are any people in, like, I don't know, Australia who watch, who potentially are like, what, 10 a.m. or something. But yeah, we got some. How's the latency? I think it's still ultra low, so. Should be good for the streams. Dubai, Jesus. Do you still trade Asian phobic? That's nuts, man. Like if you trade Asian properly, right, then that's insane. Alright, Jack, just type 1 when you hear this. Okay, about 6-7 seconds. That's perfect, man. Yo. Bougie's here as well. Bougie's here every day now. I think Jacob's also here most days. Jack's here every day. Kurt's been here for multiple days. Falcon's here basically every day as well. Phobic, you were here yesterday. Was that your first time here yesterday, Phobic? Oh no, I probably would have missed you then. Yeah, I didn't really read chat much. I think in the very early days of the stream, or maybe you joined during the Signal voice chat. So that's probably what happened. Oh Jesus Christ, Kurt! It's your 4th stream. Oh, nice. Is it helping you? If you have questions, feel free to drop them in. Oh yeah, I drew up this level like right after we were pushing, like when we were around these sorts of areas. I think I drew up this level for buys, and I missed it because I was busy doing something else, and it tapped, and we would have probably closed at about 40 pips, but that was beautiful, right? You see this? It literally tapped exactly like one or 2 pips away from that level. That would have been beautiful, man. Anyways, let's get rid of this. Fantastic phobic. Right, let's go to the monthly. Monthly, we've broken the lows, right? Broken previous monthly lows, current monthly lows. We're coming down. We're very bearish, and this is exactly what we were expecting, right? Price is respecting this level, right? We're respecting this level, so we're likely to come fill the range, right? This could have been liquidity grab 1, and this potentially is liquidity grab 2, a fake out to come back into this range here, potentially even below here, and ideally below here, right? So if we get that break of the previous low and this existing support that's around here, fantastic. We're going to come down, no doubt, to at least 1821 and potentially even down to about 1770s. So Zay, you are not first, man. There have been so many messages before you, brother. Anyways, yeah. So monthly's breaking the lows, right? So what can we say in terms of the monthly time frame? Let's draw this in terms of lines, right? We've come up from here, down, we're coming back up, right? We had another low around here, coming back up. Cool, we've broken the lows, come up for that high, broke those, come up to here, and now we're coming down. So because of this, right, we can expect that price either is going to be just rejecting here, and this is going to be our lower high. We're looking for potentially a lower high to be formed again. You know, it might be around these levels, right? These wicks around here. that could happen. We might need to look on this lower time frame for that to play out, but we could be looking for these kind of wicks. If this starts coming down, breaking these lows, tapping around, say 50 sorts of areas, right, we'd be looking for top wicks to come down again. But if you imagine the whole range is around from 1989 to around 1829, right? And within this range, if it fills it immediately first, right, then we don't know what's going to happen. It could continue to go back up, fill the range, and then make a decision as it kind of ranges, or it can continue breaking through. If it breaks through, it needs volume, it needs liquidity to do that, because currently it's just going to fill the range. That's what we know, but we don't know what's actually going to happen after it fills the range. So in terms of the monthly, right, we're very bearish, and we'll continue to be bearish for the next 2 days. I think we have Thursday and Friday left for trading. So yeah, like, expect this to continue dropping, I would say. You hovered around these sorts of areas for a week, 2 weeks, didn't really do anything. You grabbed liquidity, you broke the monthly highs as well, and now you're flipping bearish, right? If this was a 5-minute chart and that's what happened on the 5-minute, you broke the highs, you're flipping bearish again, high chance of you coming down, right? Okay, let's drop down to the weekly. Weekly, no top wick, right? But we analyze, does it need a top wick? If you combine these two candles, this could be just a top wick for this weekly, right? You don't necessarily need a top wick. So clearly you don't, right? And you're driving down, you're filling ranges. So I would say your previous range was around here, your previous support, right? These kind of areas here, support around here. Now you're breaking into these sorts of areas, right? So on the weekly, if you're going to break that structure, you're going to come down to fill, I would say, around here, potentially even down to these sorts of areas, right? And how am I identifying that? I'm looking at this, right? I'm looking at, these pushes. Once it broke through on this, potentially would be the daily or the 4-hour, filled the range. Broke through, filled the range, rejected, right? Filled the range, fake out, filled the range, went back up, grab liquidity, come down, right? Every time it closed into the range, went up as well, closed up, filled the range here, faked out, came back down. So it generally, I would say it's around here, right? It's not necessarily going to be exactly here, but bear in mind this is the weekly time frame. You could say it's around here as well. So essentially, it's filling ranges, right? If this is the range that is currently being filled, it'll make a decision here, right? If it's not, then potentially we'll look at the next level of support, which could be down at these levels. But the weekly doesn't kind of contribute much in terms of taking our trades on the lower time frames, but it gives us a picture of what's actually happening. And the key thing to take away from this is, we've broken these lows, right? Broken these lows, so there's a high chance we're just going to drive. And if you remember, like, the clean traffic sort of concepts that Don has in the playbook, right? Looking left, this is clean traffic to come down, right? One candle, no bottom wick here, so essentially you can combine these two candles for one massive candle going up. So if it's mirroring this is clean traffic to come down. You're going to drive all the way down, potentially even down to 1810 sorts of areas, right? So just keep in mind that the weekly is very bearish, right? Obviously, I would say for the next 2 days that you're trading, so Thursday and Friday. Thursday, likely it's going to continue to push. So it's either Thursday pushes, Friday comes back in terms of leaving the weekly a little bit of a bottom wick, or it will kind of grab liquidity today and it will continue to push tomorrow. I think it's very unlikely that you will be ranging twice, so in 2 days, for a total of 2 days. All right, let's look at the daily. Where did the daily close? All right, let's get rid of these. Let's look at the daily. So the daily closed here. I would say that is below my support, right? If I have a support around here, let's see if this is a valid support first of all. Do you have any other data? I would say in terms of most recent, it's not bad. We can confirm this slightly better potentially on the 4-hour, right? But I'm liking it in general. I'm seeing these, some level of support here. resistance around these areas, right? And these obviously. So I'm happy with it in general. I would say identify your next range going down, right? So if it is going to fill the range, what is the range? And it's exactly here, around 1850, right? Because look at this, it filled the range here. This fills the range, up, down, up again, broke because there was enough volume. This filled the range, didn't break up, filled the range back down, you know, tapped, and then you're starting to come back down. So I would say if you're breaking into 1875 to 1850, this 250 pip range on the daily, then great, all right? You could look to fill the range. Obviously, you'll have smaller ranges on the lower time frame, so you potentially have a range around 1861 as well. But in terms of the daily, that's not a very clear range. So if the daily is closing below here, it's likely that the daily chart either will fake out, right, to grab more liquidity to come down, or it's just going to drive straight through. And because we've broken this low, you can say, right, structure, if you just look at it in general, you know, we've failed to break these highs, right? This was a potential area market structure was going to change, but it didn't. Lower high, now we're creating that lower low. So when it's a lower low, you don't know how far it's going to drive for that lower low, right? These higher highs, right? So you made a lower high here when you're driving up, and your next higher high was all the way up to these areas, right? So it can drive very far, and it can also, like after grabbing this liquidity, if it just needs a little bit more liquidity, it will start pumping down again. So taking buys is difficult, right? And if you are taking buys, I would be careful in terms of what you're trying to catch. If you're trying to catch a massive range, might be difficult. If you're trying to catch, you know, just small moves, 10, 20 pips, it might be doable. So just keep that in mind, right? Jumping to the 4 hour. 4 hour closed bearish, respecting something. It will be respecting something. Let's have a look what it's respecting. I would say, this is messy. This is very, very messy. Let's have a look. Could be here. Yeah, 4 is not very clear, right? So I don't know where it is. I don't know where the 4 hour support is. Could be here, could be somewhere else. I mean, I'll put it here for now, 1871. You know, there's a wick here tapping this. Some level of support around here, probably on the lower time frame. Stronger support here, right? Some wick rejections up to these areas. I'm okay with 1871 as our support for now. Obviously, because we closed below here, you know, there will be multiple ranges in between this area. So let's try to identify that. So let's see what the range we're in, and how, let's see where that range is. So I would say potentially up to here, right? Yeah, relatively happy with that. I'm actually going to jump down to the 1 hour to try to confirm these ranges a little bit better. Oh, this is quite nice, by the way. Okay, I'm going to put a level here just for now, and we're going to, as we're on the 1 hour, we can probably see what price is doing. So 1871 looks pretty good there, right? If you're looking here, what does this look like? And this kind of will give you information on like how I identify ranges and everything as well, right? This is just messy, so I'm going to ignore that. This range is down to here. Cool. It's around these sorts of areas. And I am happy with that. I'm happy with this being range. And this, on the smaller time frame, is another range, right? So identifying this to this is also a range. So 1873 to 1869 is also a range. And depending on how you play it, you could catch some pips there. This is unclear for now, but yeah, okay, so going back to the 4, this is where we're closing respecting, I would say 1869 on the 4 hours. So it's likely, because it's in this range now, it's likely going to come down and fill the range towards these areas, right? So how can we get sells or how can we get buys? I would say now that now that price has actually, form some hourly structure in terms of some bullish candles, some bearish, and then another bullish candle currently, you might get an opportunity to get into some buys for some level of retracement, right? Because even though we're very bearish on the weekly, daily, and 4 hour, we understand that price needs liquidity to drive anywhere. So the fact that it's just pushed without any larger, higher time frame liquidity grabs is relatively rare. I'd say this, ideally, if this didn't happen, we would have so many more liquidity grabs potentially. So this probably was the substitute for many liquidity grabs along the way, along its push. But yeah, so in terms of the 4 hour, there's not very clear areas for buys or sells. I'm just looking at potentially what did price do last time it tapped 1869. So where am I interested in terms of those areas, right? So I would be interested in that level around here, but it kind of disrespected this level, so I can't really use that as well. And also this is very messy, right? So the last time price drove down to those kind of areas, I would say it's like kind of this, right? So if it's driving and it's respecting around these areas, I think it's also respecting 1874 sorts of areas. So if it's respecting this in general, we're looking for a bottom wick, right? Bottom wick tapping these sorts of areas to try up to grab that liquidity. Obviously, we might not grab liquidity so high up, but getting in buys could potentially happen once we get more structure. So I'm interested in this in general, right? So let's highlight this. I'm also interested in this, all right? So this is also a bearish, you're coming down from 1907, you've respected 1869, you've grabbed liquidity towards 1865 sorts of areas, and you're driving up to 88 sorts of areas, right? This is the 4 hour. Any others bearish kind of, this kind of maybe around this area as well, right? So, this you could say it potentially was a fake out on the higher time for the daily or something, with these wicks here. So I'm relatively interested in this level as well. I'd say the range probably is around here. So let's mark this up for so let's mark this up for buys for now, and then we'll look at that towards later on. So where else am I looking potentially, right? So 1869 is where I'm looking at. It's not very clear at the moment, which is why we need more market structure. Cool. All right, just gonna put that for now. So what does this look like in the most recent ranges? So 1869, cool, right? We're tapping into these sorts of areas potentially to get buys. So I'm gonna move this up to around here. All right, potentially, yeah, around these sorts of areas, right? 1862 is potential buys depending on structure. And what do I mean by that? I mean, currently, price on the 4 hour has not printed a single proper bullish candle since Monday, right? This is your only proper candle essentially, and it was a fake out candle, right? No bottom wick, and then you're clearly grabbing liquidity for a very strong push down. This is a doji 4 hour candle, so you haven't really had a single bullish 4 hour candle. So once you have sorts of structure like this, so you've come down, haven't grabbed liquidity, right? So we've just done this. So once that happens, it starts ranging, right? If it indicates it wants to go up, maybe potentially it ranges around here, indicates it wants to go up, grabs liquidity, cool. I'll get into buys around here, and this could be around these sorts of areas, right? But right now, if we're doing this and we're just getting into a buy potentially at 1874, there's no indication that this is a change of structure. Sure, you can potentially get into buys here for a liquidity grab, but we also understand that if price wants to move up, it will need to grab liquidity to come down first before going up. But also we need to reference ourselves based on where is it grabbing liquidity, right? Because what's to say this push wasn't the liquidity grab, right? So we need a range to be formed before we know what is liquidity. If you have this being formed, right, and then you have this being formed, cool, you know where you need to grab liquidity. You're in a range 2, this is range 1, so you're either grabbing liquidity towards range 1 or below to go back up, right? But if you had just this, cool, cool. So what is liquidity grab here? Like you haven't stopped, you haven't consolidated. So this could be a liquidity grab, or it could just be a lower low. So this is what we mean by when price is very bearish or very bullish in one direction. You need to be careful, right? You have to think about this is just price dropping and following very strong market structure trends. So it is exactly like Don was saying, right? You're basically trying to catch a falling knife, and that's very difficult. So wait for a structure to be formed. But I would say if price, let's say on the 1 hour, the reason I say this is quite nice, right? It's because it looks like you found support, right? You've found support here, first time. You've come up, closed bearish, no bottom wick here, right? So if this hourly closes bullish with no bottom wick as well, right? Above this candle, I'd be looking for potentially a bottom wick down to these sorts of areas, breaking these levels, potentially 69 sorts of areas, right? And then a flip up. And that would be my entry. I would enter like that. My buys would be around here. Because I'm understanding that if price is doing this, right? If it wants to come down, right? If it wants to come down, cool. Then it'll come down from these sorts of areas again, right? Or it will come back up to around 1874 before, okay, coming back, like it's following market structure. So this will be, let me draw this out. So it will be like this. So you've come down, right? Come down to here. It's very likely you'll tap here before going down, right? Because that's just equal lower, it's just the levels that you're tapping before continuing that structure down. So a buy here is relatively good, I would say, depending on where this level is. Could be around 69, could be earlier, depending on this kind of structure here. But that's what we're looking for in terms of our setup. And sells, let's look at sells. Sells is also difficult because last time, if we go back to the daily, right? Sure, the last time we closed below, I would say generally 1876, you came down to fill the range here. So just looking on the daily chart, which seems to be the clearest at the moment, if you come up to these sorts of areas, I'll have a sell, right? These sorts of areas between 80, but probably around like between 83 and 88. Because I'm understanding that price is still very bearish, right? So if you get those, if you get some top wicks on these 4 hours on this next daily, then potentially we can get into some sells to come down to fill the range towards around 62. But until that happens, right? If price just kind of struggles around here, but then like it's printing structure that it wants to go up in the short term, might get some buys to go up to try to tap 88. Then I'll try to get some sells around these sorts of areas to come back down and continue market structure to fill what is the monthly and the weekly structure, right? So monthly, it's looking to fill down to around 1826. Weekly, it's looking to fill down to around either, I would say, 1834 sorts of areas. Between like here and even like 1809, 1810 sorts of areas. So yeah, so let's look on where this level is on the 4 hour. Last time price just started trickling up. You could have played all these ranges, right? This could have been a liquidity to come down, right? You're showing that you're generally, you're still very bearish here, so you could have taken more sells around 80 and you would have got quite a nice, like how many pips is that? Like 160 pip move, right? All of this is a massive range, right? All of this. So you could be looking for sells potentially at around these levels. I'm understanding that, I'm also seeing these wicks here. I'm seeing that this is a strong support and resistance as well. So there is a high chance if you're following bearish structure that you will come down, and so you'll come up, tap these levels, and you'll need to make a decision around these areas. So if that happens, cool, right? You're breaking these highs. Ideally, I would like to see something like this being formed first. So something like this, indicating it's breaking below and then coming up and tapping these sorts of areas and then coming down. So if that happens, that'll be incredible because I have my direction. This obviously, this wick here, sorry, this candle here cannot be a no bottom wick candle. And then when it comes up and it kind of wicks really quickly into these areas, I'll take a sell, and I'll likely take the sell, and I'll be break even around here, right? Because I'm understanding if price wants to go up, it could just go up from here. So say price does this, right? Ranges, comes up, it could start going up like that, right? So this could be a change in market structure, and this could be your liquidity grab. So that's why we take, you know, profit here or potentially go break even here. But yeah, I would say today it's difficult to get buys. Sells generally, let's say 74 to 80, right? So thing is with the sells as well, you tapped around 1862 before coming up to 1880 to come back down. So taking a sell at 1880 immediately currently with the price structure is relatively difficult, because you're in a range between here and here, right? So at any point this could, like, it could just not be enough liquidity for you to continue driving down. So I'm potentially even looking at these areas, right? So you also have wicks around here, you have a level here as well. I mean, you have, yeah, like it could be some level of sells around here. I would say these are my sells for now. I appreciate they're 60 pips away. I would say currently with price, this is my sells. If price just starts pushing up from what is 1874, I won't have sells here at 1880 currently with the price structure, and I'll have sells around here. But if price starts breaking down, and then, you know, it's filling the range down to 69, and it's also looking like it's breaking, then I'll take a sell at around these areas. So what is that going to look like? It's going to look like this, right? You've come down, we're currently in this range, right? So you can do this for a while. If it comes down, right, and it's indicating that, okay, cool, it might want to go down. If it comes up to tap these areas first and then come down, I'll have that sell. It's exactly what we just drew up, right? It's just what's happening exactly on this chart. So that's what I'll look for. But that'll take time to happen, right? So it's not going to happen immediately, and we appreciate that. I'm looking at potentially even these areas for buys, because this, some strong levels of support here, the wick here, right? I mean, this is your general buy zone, I would say. Like you can look for small ranges to get tapped around those areas. If not, it's either it's currently, because price isn't very clear, I would say it's within this kind of zone here. This 70 pip zone. I appreciate that's massive, right? But yeah, it's difficult to get anything without any structure. Because look at this. This is, if this 4 hour flips after breaking this high, it's just going to come down and fill the range, right? Fill the range on the 4 hour potentially, which is, if you just look at the overall, like, look at this. This is clean traffic to come down, right? You had some level of support around these areas, but in general, this is very clean. You haven't had a single bearish candle all the way during this bullish push up. So if you're mirroring that, you can just start driving all the way down to 1812. So taking a buys is difficult, and I'm not even too sure currently where I would take buys. I'm just looking at where price is likely to have some level of rejection, and those are strong levels that price has tapped before and had some rejections, and that's looking in general into these areas here, right? So these wicks even down to here. But yeah, I would say if price starts breaking really bearish and you don't really get any top wicks, this is your next strongest level in terms of buys, because this is a daily support. This daily support, every time it's been bear, like the last times it's been bearish, right? Let's just have a look, right? These sorts of bearish pushes, what happened last? Well, what are we mirroring potentially? We're mirroring potentially this. Could be mirroring this. Right, these pushes down, I would say. I wouldn't even count those really, because you don't really push down from these areas. But yeah, I would say it's these two mainly. And every time you're in this sort of area, you can see you kind of have some like level of support here, and then you're in a range potentially from here to there, right? So this is the range. So you're in this range, so you're likely to fill the range. So if you're filling the range, taking your first rejection off there, you could grab 10-20 pips there, and that would be pretty valid. So generally, this is where you're looking for buys and sells, right? So what's that? 1884 and 1861, right? 84, 61, 84, 86 sorts of areas, yeah, 80 to 88 sorts of areas, 61, 62 areas for buys. So it's pretty accurate, I would say, and it aligns with the daily, right? That just proves that it aligns with the daily. So yeah, but price currently is not very clear. With this 1 hour support, you could take trades on the 1 hour. I would need the, as I was explaining just now, right? So I need this hour to close above, right? With no bottom wick potentially. And once price comes down, creates that bottom wick for it, I'll look for drives to come back up. But yeah. But sells, I would say sells here are also difficult. I'll only get sells here if price breaks below in terms of like a closure, like a bearish closure there, and then you get this flip up to grab liquidity and then flip back down. That's the only ways I can get sells towards around from around 1880. If not, if it starts trickling up, then it's going to have to be slightly higher. Does that make sense to everyone? I mean, like, there's probably loads of questions for today, right? Because price isn't very clear. So yeah, feel free to ask some questions starting now. The analysis is basically done. Like, it's difficult to play these ranges, I would say. I'll keep these levels. Yeah, but in general, because you're closing below, you know, the most recent sort of areas, it's difficult to look on the hourly and the 4 hour because, you know, it's quite far away. You don't have any very recent structure, and the most recent structure is just clean traffic to go down to 62. So, you know, if it's just going to drop like it dropped here, you don't want to take a buy in the middle here and be sitting through this much drawdown just to grab, you know, potentially a break even or whatever, right? So you want to look at where it potentially will tap before rejecting. If it doesn't mirror this and it's going to trickle around, we can expect bottom wicks potentially to come down here after it's forming bullish structure for buys to come up to around these areas. But this is the range you're playing. It's a massive range, right? What's this range? It's like 230 pips. Yeah. Yeah. Does anybody know who Bard is? I think some Bard asked a question on the signals chat. Is Bard here today? Zay, let's have a look. So going on the monthly, no top wick price technically doesn't need to top the no top wick if it drives all the way down to 1812. I would say with what just happened in terms of like the monthly candle most recently, right? It, you know, ranging in the middle of the candle and then breaking up, breaking the monthly high, the current monthly highs, and then flipping bullish to break the bearish lows. It just shows that, like, okay, so let's draw this, right? So what did price do? So the monthly had an open, right? Created a top wick, started coming down, ranged, right? Ranged, did this, right? Now it's pushing down. So what does this what does this look like in terms of price, right? Let's say price, it's like coming down from not very steep, but like around these sorts of areas. So your structure is generally bearish, right? So if this is your bearish move down and you're ranging here, this is just a liquidity grab. You've broken the monthly highs, but it's a fake out, and that's exactly what we got. That was the fake out we got on the 4 hour. If that's the fake out, you're just going to drive. And if it's going to drive, we're looking at potentially like monthly candle drives or like weekly candle drives, right? And those are some massive drives that we can get. Like, we're looking at the weekly, breaking these lows, filling the ranges down to like these sorts of areas, 1831, like around here, right? We're looking at these sorts of areas. Number one, number two, we're looking at potentially these sorts of areas as well. So it's just going to come down and fill that. Like most immediately, I would say it's going to come down to fill 1850 at least. And that's just a matter of time, right? Like, might not happen in this monthly because we have like a couple days left, but will happen in the near future, like in the next month or whatever. Yeah, it's likely that we'll come back up to get that top wick. I would say if you do come back up to get that top wick, it's a strong indication that price is likely to be breaking structure. So we could be looking for bottom wicks to come back and tapping these sorts of areas to come to retest those highs. But you know, the weekly has no top wick. Doesn't need a top wick, not necessarily, but if it does come back up to create that top wick, then it's likely that it's not going to come back down. Yusuf, because there's not much structure and also because there's news tomorrow. Oh, what's the news tomorrow? Is it? Oh, okay. We have unemployment claims. It's pretty big, right? It's pretty big in terms of news. So yeah, I mean that could drive price in any direction. If it does drive price down, you'll just see a strong push down to 1850, and potentially even more. Because yeah, price will fill ranges, and we're just looking at where we can potentially capture bits of it, right? If you look at general structure on the weekly, let's go to the daily actually. Dailies, yeah, weekly's a little bit too high level, right? But you know, you had your previous lower low here. You know, you've come down. So if you were to draw this, all right, I know you appreciate you have this, right? And it's not perfect, but coming up to these sorts of areas, or potentially these areas for your cells to come down, be perfect. This area is 1888, which is where we're looking at. Up to here is 1902, 1903 sorts of areas, right? So if it does do that, that's fantastic. It doesn't have to, but yeah. Or will near 8 a.m. will there be enough structure? So I don't know, right? Because structure doesn't have to be created. With this current bearish trend, price could easily just continue bearish. Like it's been trickling down, even after New York, right? Like late New York, it was just trickling down slowly, but there was volume, right? It was pushing price down. So at any given point, right, even with news, you could just continue to move before news, and you could create no structure. So we just have to wait for that to happen. Like we're not here to predict what's happening in the markets. We're just here to react to it, right? So once it creates a structure, then we'll look for higher probability setups, right? If it doesn't create the structure, then no, we're not going to get anything potentially, right? Either we go with the bias and we're looking for those aggressive sells, or we don't get any buys, because we're understanding that if there's no structure, the probability of getting buys or market structure changes is harder. Phobic, I am trading on demo since the last 7 months, and now this month I deposit 100, and now I'm trading, and I'm $85 left. Should I deposit more, or I trade on this? Cool, that's a very good question, Phobic. So I would say in terms of my journey as a trader, I've only been trading officially with like Don since March, and then I lost a bunch of money between March and around May. I would say like late April, I would say. So I lost money for about a month and a half, right? So one thing I mentioned to Jacob as well, and I think quite a lot of other people have said this, and I think Wix mentioned this, and he's a huge advocate for this, is you take your $100 account, right? You've basically done the first step. You've created a $100 account. Now just trade it like a live account, because it is a live account, and that $100 means something to you. So there is emotion behind your trading, instead of a demo account where you just you can pop like 100 lots and be like, yeah, it doesn't matter because it doesn't affect you, right? There's no emotion behind it. Have some emotion behind it, but control that level of emotion, that you can, the max amount of emotion that you'll lose for a $100 account, is controlled, right? Because you know that's your maximum loss. Whereas if you have $10,000 in there, you're not ready to lose $10,000 when you're not profitable. So why put all that money in that you're like kind of willing to lose, essentially, right? So stay on that $100 account, even though you're on 85. It's fine. It's good that you're on 85, right? It just means that you're slowly trickling down, and you potentially want to see over time you're coming down, you're losing money, but you're losing money slower, right? Maybe in the next month you're only losing $10. The month after that you're losing $5, right? And then maybe the month after that you break even. And after that, the trajectory is you're slowly getting more wins than you are getting losses, right? Your wins, will gradually, outweigh your losses, and you'll slowly become profitable like that. So that's exactly what you just need to do. Like, you've done the first step, just trade it sensibly with a 0.01, right? Obviously it's a $100 account, right? You're not trying to make a lot of money on this account, but you're just using it to build up your discipline, your skills in terms of like over trading and over leveraging, and also being able to just the skill of price action reading. Yo, Carlos, how you doing? I haven't seen you in a while. Welcome to the streams. But yeah, Phoebe, that was a good question. Stitches, what's the motion? All right, so let's go to the 4 hour. 4 hour printed the motion fantastically, right? So I'm just going to look at this specifically, right? So actually, let's go down to the 1 hour. So look at this. Where is a good example of the motion? This is a fantastic thing for the motion. So look at this, right? At some point, price was in this range, right? Let's say you're in a range between 14 and 08, right? So since you're in that range, right, it means that price doesn't have enough liquidity to go anywhere, right? So what happened? What happened is you came down, you're following this bearish structure, and you came down to grab liquidity, right? You grab liquidity to go up, potentially, right? But also understanding that this is the first time here that you've broken out of the range, right? So you've broken out of the range here, right? Indicating that you want to continue bearish movement, right? So I'm only looking up to like around here, probably. Next candle after that, right? Well, let's print like one other candle, right? So I'm only looking up to here. So this for me would be the motion and the liquidity grab, right? We're bearish, we're closing bearish below the range, right? Indicating that this is the direction, and it's confirming the direction overall, right? And then it's coming back into the range with no top wick and a fake out to come down, right? You faked out, and you also, for the next candle, you broke back into this range, and you also have a top wick breaking very far into it and breaking and getting those highs for these two candles, right? So this in general, if I draw some lines for this, right, it's just ranges like this, breaks, liquidity down, right? And obviously this liquidity can be anywhere from here, or even just about here, but we will, like, the higher it is, the higher the probability trade and the probability of the trade and the confirmation. But this is exactly what happened, right? Push down here, consolidation, break out of the range, all right, break out of the range here, came back into the range to grab liquidity, and then started dropping, right? So a lot of people would be like, oh, okay, so you're breaking back in this range, right? Cool. Why can't I just take a buy here? Because your breakout of this range into here. Because you have to understand that, you're very bearish at the moment. A breaking back into this range could just be a liquidity grab for you to continue driving down, and that's what a fake out is, right? And that's exactly what Don was saying with that's what he learned, I think, last year, like, or the year before, in terms of fake outs. So taking a buy here would be now it's not the best decision, right? Now that we know about fake outs. Yeah, no worries, Stitches. Cool. What else? Yeah. See, like, Phobic, you have loads of people here who have definitely struggled with the same issues. Being profitable is not easy, man. Like, I wouldn't even say I'm like fully profitable. I think my analysis is getting there, and like my actual trading is getting there. But in terms of monetary wise, like I haven't made back all the money I've lost, right? But I know I will eventually, and so that's fine. Like I'm just in it for the long term, right? I'm gonna make my money, and it's gonna happen once I build up the skill. So once I have the skill, I'm not worried about the money, because then if I have a skill that's profitable, how are you gonna lose money on a profitable skill, right? Yeah, Carlos. Just trying to help myself and also help the community if I can, man. But yeah, oh yeah, that Bard guy had a good question in terms of what you had previously in terms of the motion stitches, I think. So let me try to find that as well. Actually, I can show you some trades that I took, right? So let's look at those, because I feel like going through my trades with you guys will also understand why I'm taking those trades. I'm scalping, right? I'm scalping very aggressively on the potentially 1 minute, 5 minute and whatnot, but it's still the motion. The motion doesn't just play out like once or twice on like the 4 hour, once a day or twice a day, right? It will happen constantly. Like even the 1 minute, it will range and it'll break out of the range, grab liquidity to come back down. Like that's just what it does. Obviously, once you're that low in terms of like time frame and like detailed time frames, there's a lot of noise that goes on, but generally it's all the same. So let us have a look. Where was the last trade I took? So let's go to the 5, and then where was it? It was here. So I'm going to highlight this box because my trade was within this area, and I'm going to go down to the 1 minute, and this is exactly what happened on the 1 minute. So what did so actually this was a 5 minute trade, so I'll go back to the 5 minute. So what was I expecting here, right? So bearish, very bearish structure, right? Let's see what it looks like on the 1 minute actually. Yeah. Okay, so cool. Yeah, so I think I got into a buy at around these areas after this had no bottom wick, right? And the next time it tapped, I went out and I got out at 10 pips around here. Why did I get into this trade? I recognized that right, this candle prior to it closed bearish or kind of doji, respecting these sorts of areas, right? Respecting these, and it wasn't kind of creating lower. It was creating lower lows, but also not really creating. Lower highs, but not creating lower lows, right? It's kind of in this range. This range wasn't broken yet, and then you had this huge spike coming down. Well, huge in the sense of a 5 minute time frame, right? You had this spike to come here, to come down to these sorts of areas, and then come all the way back to close, respecting this candle. Next 5 drove down instantly, no top wick. I was like, cool, okay, let's see how it closes. Closed no bottom wick, right? No bottom wick. I was like, okay, interesting. I'm gonna get into a buy, and I'm only gonna be targeting the top of this range, right? I'm scalping very aggressively, and on the 1, this is like exactly 10 pips, right? So I'm understanding that market structure is still this. We just consolidated. We're breaking below, but there's no bottom wick here, right? So there's a high chance that it's gonna reject at here and grab liquidity to come down. Even if this candle had a bottom wick, you'd also still be expecting something like this, right? Some liquidity grab potentially here, right, to come back down. So I was grabbing this part of the move, right? And it just so happened I got out exactly here, and that's exactly where it tapped before it started to come down. So that's one trade that I took. Does that make sense? Does this trade make sense? This is just the motion on the 5. Yeah. Why didn't I sell straight after? Because I was appreciating that, okay, cool, you're bearish, but at the same time, you could grab more liquidity going up. So I just don't know. I think our key levels were also around these areas. There were some levels around there. Why didn't I continue? Yeah, so like you don't know where liquidity will be grabbed, right? I'm only in the markets here, and I'm in a buy, which is very aggressive because the market is selling off very aggressively as well, right? So I'm going against the market. So keeping a buy for too long is going to fuck you up, because you're going to be worried that price is just going to continue to drop, following the structure. So you just don't know what it's going to do. So if it was a sell, cool, potentially could have held it, until the 5 or the 15 started closing against me in terms of like structure changing, making higher highs instead of lower lows. But yeah, that was just one aggressive trade. What was the other one? Then we also took Don's trade, right? But I took Don's trade slightly earlier. Where was that? This is the 1 minute. Yeah, it's so difficult to find these on the 1 minute. Jesus. Give me a second, guys. In the meantime, if you have any questions, man, just chuck them in the chat. I'll read them. I'll get to them. Don't worry about it. So this price point was around 1889. So around these areas, right? Yeah, cool. So I got into a sell here. So I was appreciating that. Cool. Structure is very, very bearish, right? We had this structure break. So like, yeah, so let's say you're in a range between here. We also have another range. Let's just say this is one fat range, right? You came down, consolidated, you're coming down again, right? So we're expecting, after it comes down, to create some level of rejection, or tapping this level to come further down, right? That's exactly what I took. Previously was from here to here, because I recognized that this had no bottom wick potentially. And this would have potentially worked out as well, right? I just didn't take it because I was looking for sells. I was in that sell mentality. But once price came up to these areas, right, it had this wick and it kind of rejected, came back down, closed relatively doji. And then you had this 5, which closed with basically no top wick, tapping this wick high. I was like, okay, it's very interesting, right? It's likely we're going to get some level of strong bearish structure forming to continue these sells coming down. So I got into a sell there and I closed 10 pips, because this is the first initial push to come back to these areas. And you have to be relatively aggressive with these, because the price typically comes back and taps the area a second time, which it did, right? Exactly this. That's where we got into the trade with Don, I think. Or we got in slightly later with Don. I think we got in like around these areas off the flip or something. But yeah, like this was my first entry. I took it for 10 pips, and I took the second one as well. That ran for around 14. So these are the two trades that I took besides Don's one. But yeah, they're still like, it's just the same concepts, right? You're trading the same ways that you would on the 4 hour, same on the 5, and same on the 1 minute, man. Hey, Bougie, nice. Yeah, you're in before the push down, right? Yeah. Yeah, Phobic, volume matters a lot while taking trades. If you don't have volume, a lot of the times, like, you'll just have a bunch of like no wick candles. Where can I demonstrate this? Like, I mean, it's probably happening right now, right? Like look at this, right? So many of these candles have no wicks. Like what is this, right? Most of these candles have no wicks. Like, so it's difficult to say like, oh, there's no wick there, so does that mean like it's going to change structure or whatever, right? Obviously the 1 minute, even if you go to the 5, you have no wicks as well. Like, look at these. There's so many candles with no wicks, so it's difficult to tell because there's not enough volume in the markets to truly give you a sense of direction. But yeah, like for example, right, this potentially would be your range, and this would be your second range, right, to come up to around these sorts of areas. So because so many of these candles close without top wicks, was I looking for a fake out here, right? No, that wouldn't have worked out. Was I looking for a fake out here? Yes, potentially, but there was a top wick here. So was I looking for a breakout? That didn't work out, right? Was I looking for a fake out on here? You know, that would have worked out, but how was I supposed to know? So there's just a bunch of like areas, like all these candles just aren't printing the information you need to make a quality trade happen. Yeah, Zay, I would say like that's one thing I learned very, like, I think that's one thing that will stick in my mind relatively for a long time, because like well, your comment was like trade with structure, right? Trade with the market trend. Like if you at any point took a buy at 1888 or like 1886, right, because you're expecting these levels to have some level of rejection, you would have got fucked, right? Price just drove straight down and you'd be in like what, 80 pips of drawdown right now. And that's the reason for understanding price. Like you understand that this is such an aggressive push down, and like also this liquidity grab on the monthly as well, right? Because those things happened, there's a high chance it doesn't need to come back, and doesn't need all that liquidity. But also the fact that like last time it pushed and came to these levels, what was it doing? It was, you know, creating structure, like clear structure, right? You're going up, going down, going up, going down, and then you tap this area, come down, reject, come back down, don't break that low, come up, create a higher high, and then you start reversing. So this is like very much market structure, whereas this is just a liquidity grab and a push. But yeah, I think that's going to be it for today. Key things to note, I guess, are firstly that volume matters, right? We just discussed that. Secondly, you need market structure to form before you're able to take more importantly buys. If you want buys, right, you're looking for buys mainly. Market structure is definitely your best friend, because you don't know where it's going to grab liquidity. You don't know what the lows are, because once it creates a low, you're then expecting for those lows to be broken for liquidity, right? So you need to understand what is that low, and until it prints the low, you don't know if it's a low. But for sells, you know, you can be more aggressive with it, and it's likely because it's going to break those lows. Taking that entry to come down is still okay. And yeah, I would say those are the main things to keep in mind. Any last questions? I appreciate it's been 54 minutes, so I'm gonna probably call it relatively soon. I remember one other person had. Yeah, somebody, I think education chat, asked in terms of like combining trading and work. I don't know if they're here. If they're not, I'm happy to answer it some other time. Yeah, I think I told them to put a message in the chat, which I don't know if they did, so if they didn't, it's all good. We can oh, Smokes the Kid, would a sell here be safe? A sell here is not safe, my friend, right? If you look at the hourly, right, you could have potentially found that support. If you're breaking these highs and you're taking a sell right here, cool, depending on what you're targeting, right? If you're targeting a small range to come down to break these lows, maybe that's fine. But at the same time, price, this could be the start of a reversal to come straight back up. So you don't know. Wait for some structure. Cool. Right, I'm gonna end it here, guys. Thank you very much for coming by to the stream. We'll be back tomorrow for the last day of this week and this month. So enjoy your Asian session with Wix, and yeah, stay safe. Always have your own analysis and compare it to everybody else's. My analysis is not 100% right. If not, I would have a 100% win rate, right? So yeah, cool. See you guys tomorrow. Thanks for coming by.